Jai Shri Krishna, Shubhodaya everyone. Welcome to the weekly Pratipadartha session that we host under this Purushottama Yoga Club every Saturday. This is a warm day today, Geeta Jayanti. We were little thinking whether to continue this session today or do we uh, cancel it today, considering that there are many rooms that are hosting something or the other different from the point of view of celebrating Geeta Jayanti. There is a nice Sanatana Dhamma Q&A going on. There is a nice Akhanda Parayana going on. We were in two minds whether to do this or not. Finally, we decided, okay, let's not stop anything that we do on regular basis, which is to do with Bhagavad-Gita, not especially on a day which is like today, which is Geeta Jayanti itself. So we will try to keep it a little shorter room today. We will try to wrap it up around 9:15 time. We will continue from where we left last week. We had stopped at the seventh shloka of the 10th chapter. We will begin the room now. Hari Om. Before we begin, a very warm Geeta Jayanti wishes to all the Sadbhaktas here. Namaste Shraddhaji, Namaste Ramesh Mahoday. Hari Om. Om. Yes, Shraddhaji.
I just said
Yes, Ramesh
namaste,
Mahoday.
Ji.
Namaste. Om. Narayanam Suragurum Jagdekanatham Bhaktapriyam Sakalaloka त्रैगुण्यवर्जितमजं विभुमाद्यमीशं वन्दे भवग्नममरासुरसिद्धवन्द्यं नारायणाय परिपूर्णगुणार्णवाय विश्वोदयस्थितिलयो नियतिप्रदाय ज्ञानप्रदाय विबुधासुरसौख्यदुःख सत्कारणाय वितताय नमो नमस्ते आसीदुदारगुणवारिधिरप्रमेय नारायणः परतमः परमात्स एकः संशान्तसंविदखिलं जठरे निधाय लक्ष्मीभुजान्तरगतस्वरतोऽपि चाग्रे नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरये देवं नारायणं नत्वा परिपूर्ण सर्वदोषविवर्जितं परिपूर्णं गुरुं शागीतार्थं वक्ष्यामि देशतः लक्ष्मीनारायणं नत्वा पूर्णबोधान् गुरूनपि कुर्मः श्रीकृष्णगीतायाः भाष्यादुक्तार्थसङ्ग्रहम् हरिः welcome everyone. We were looking at the 10th chapter. 10th chapter is fundamentally extension to the question that was raised by Arjuna at the beginning of the 8th chapter. The beginning of the 8th chapter goes on with a very lengthy question from Arjuna where he is apparently asking eight different things. He's inquiring about eight different things. Kim tat Brahma? What is that Brahma? Kim Adhyatma? What is this Adhyatma? Kim Karma Purushottama? Oh Purushottama, what is this karma? Adhibhutam cha kim proktam, Adidaivam kimuchyate. What is this? What is called as Adhibhuta? What is called as Adidaiva? Adhiyajna katham kaha atra. Dehesmin Madhusudana. This Adhiyajna, what is this Adhiyajna and how is it? How is this Adhiyajna? Prayana kale cha katham jneyah asi niyatatmabihi. How are you to be thought about by the people who are constantly engaged in yoga? When they depart, when they give up the body, how are you to be thought about? The whole of 8th and the 9th chapter are primarily explaining these Ashtatmaka Brahma questions. And for the ease of understanding, I call this as the Ashtatmaka Brahma because all of them are one angle, one dimension of the way Parabrahma can be understood. Through understanding the whole big picture, Parabrahma himself is one way. Understanding what is happening in all our karma is one way of understanding the Bhagavad Rupa. Understanding the true nature of the self, the Adhyatma Subhava, Jnana, right? So that itself is another way of understanding the Bhagavan. Understanding the various Adhibhuta, how the material world is manifesting. Understanding that perhaps is one nice gateway to understand the Bhagavan, the big picture, the Parabrahma. Understanding the various Adhidaiva forces, the various other celestial forces that impact our lives, that will influence our lives. That's another way of understanding the Parabrahma. Understanding this entire thing as yajna, the whole of creation, understanding that to be the big yajna, where the entire cosmos itself is the Homakunda, where Bhagavan offered himself. Yajnena yajnava yajantate yamaha. That itself is a big yajna. When we understand this Adhyajna picture of this entire creation, which is the Bhagavan himself, he himself is the Yajna. Yajno by Vishnu. That's what we hear in the Shankara Bhashya repeatedly, right? When we see the Bhagavad-Gita. So Yajna itself is that big picture. So when we contemplate on that Yajna, it's a good way of understanding the Bhagavan. And not only contemplating on what is this yajna, what is my role, katham and kaha, two things, right? Kaha is what is this yajna, and how is this yajna being played out, in our day-to-day lives. Katham, dehesmin madhusudana, like, how is this playing out in our day-to-day lives? How are we part of this adi yajna? That's another beautiful way of understanding the Bhagavad Tattva. So, very beautiful set of questions from Arjuna. And then finally, he concludes with the eighth question, which is at the time of departing this material manifestation that we have acquired, how are you to be thought about? Now, how are you to be thought about? Katham jneyah asi, uh, कैसे जान पाओगे, like कैसे जानने की उचित हो, like something like that, right? कैसे जानने के लिए लायक हो और उचित हो, something like that, right? My Hindi is bad. ಹೇಗೆ ನಿನ್ನನ್ನು ಹೇಗೆ ನೆನೆಯಲು ಪಡುವೆ, ಕಥಂ ಜ್ಞೇಯಃ ಅಸಿ, ನಿಯತಾತ್ಮಭಿಃ. Now that can be understood as two ways, right? We spoke about this very briefly. That question in English can mean, how can somebody think of you, and how should somebody think of you? How should is in what different bhavas, in what different expressions, in what different forms should we think about you when we depart the body? And more practically speaking, at the time of departing the body, what will the mind be occupied in? In obviously in the firefighting, right? We have to cling on to the body. We have to somehow fight this death. That's where the maximum thought process will be directed towards. And how can anybody even think of Bhagavan at that time? It's not easy. So there are two parts. How are you to be thought about? How should you be thought about? And how is it even possible? How can somebody even do this? Thinking of you at the time of the departure, because that's where the seventh chapter ends. Right? Sadhi bhutadi devam mam sadhi yajnam chaye viduhu prayana kale cha yama. Te viduryukta chetasa. They will think about me. But Arjuna's question is more practical. How should you think of? How should you be thought about? And how is it even possible that you be in the thoughts? Like, at the time of prayana, we have much better things to do, like clinging onto the body, right? Now, beautifully, this is what we see in the eighth and the ninth chapter. In the eighth chapter, all the whats are addressed. Okay, what is this? What is Brahma? What is Karma? What is Adhyatma? All of this is addressed. And we get to hear, when we listen to them again. All of them are eventually pointing towards that one single, the Ashtatmaka Brahma questions lead to the Akshara Brahma as a concept. That entire big thing is that Sarvam Khalvidam Brahma. That's something that we get very, very nicely. And how is it possible, right? How are you to be thought about is one, Kavim Purana Manusha Sitaram Anoraniya. This is the way we have to think about Bhagavan. These explanations come in the eighth chapter. But how is it possible? Only through bhakti, right? Bhakti, the entire ninth chapter, is a beautiful summary of bhakti. One of the longest discourses on beautiful aspects of bhakti. First time we are encountering in the ninth chapter. Ninth chapter, popularly in many, many Vyakhyanas, is also called the Bhakti Yoga, because the last 10, 12, 13, from the time where he starts telling Ananyas Chintayanto Mage Janaha Paryupasate Tesham Nityabhyuktanam Yogakshemam Vahamyaham. Like, you don't bother about Yogakshema, is what he said in the second chapter. Nidhi Yogakshema Atmavan Bhava is something that Krishna says in the second chapter. But in the ninth chapter, he says, people who engage in ananya chetasa bhakti towards me, for them I will take care of the yoga kshema. Right? Whatever yoga kshema they need, I will take care of it. That's a very nice proclamation coming from Bhagavan, right, to Arjuna. And from that point, it's all bhakti to the point of, manmana bhava, madbhakto bhava, madhyaji, mam namaskuru, mameva aishyasi yuktva evam atmanam, matparayana bhava. So be in my chintana always. You will acquire my bhava, no doubt. And there is no question of prayana kale, what to be thought about. Prayana kale, it becomes automatic that you are constantly engaging in my thought. right? Prayana kale also you will be thinking about me, right? So the whats and the hows are beautifully explained for those lengthy set of questions from Arjuna, the Ashtatmaka Brahma questions from Arjuna. Now, in the 10th chapter, what we hear is that, the big summary happened. The 10th chapter begins with this nice sloka, right? Bhuya eva mahabaho shrunume paramam vachaha. Bhuya eva shrunu. A priyamanaya mahabaho, a mahabaho who is getting excited. Priyamanaya, somebody who is getting delighted. He priyamanaya mahabaho, he mighty armed Arjuna. Bhuya eva me paramam vachaha shrunu. Listen to this, my supreme paramavacha again. Yatte aham hitakamyaya vakshyami, which I am going to narrate you for the sake of your betterment. Because if somebody is getting delighted, jumping up in joy, that person need to be, drilled into some sense again. Perhaps that's something, that's one way of looking at it, right? And then nave vidu suragana prabhavanna maharshaya. As much as I told you that, mameva eshyasi yuktva evam, you will acquire me. But acquiring me, there is also a trick to it, right? Name viduhu suraganaha maharshayaha api na prabhavan na viduhu. Nobody gets the complete picture of my prabhava, and nobody can get the complete sense of who I am. As much as I am giving you assurance that no, you will acquire me, you will never know what I am also, because the suraganas don't know, maharshayaha don't know. Then who will know? Nobody will know, right? Ahamadirhi Devana. I am the beginning for all the Devarashis, Maharshina Sarvashaha, and also for the Maharshis in every aspect. Right? Yo Mam Ajam Anadim Chavetri, the one who knows about me to be that Aja, unborn, Anadi, without Anadi, and Loka Maheshwaram Chaitaveti, and also knows me to be the Loka Maheshwara. Asammudha Samartyeshu. Among the mortals, he becomes asammudha without any mudhatva. Because mudhatva is a default entity of creation. Sammoha sarge yanti parantapa. Sarva bhutani sammoha sarge yanti parantapa is something that Krishna says. The, the time of creation only, the creation is such that it is been designed with some moha, samyak moha, very beautiful moha, mohita jagat, right? But through the jnana, asammudaha, they will become, and sarva papaihi pramuchyate. They will be freed from all sorts of papa. Then, how does the asammudhatva acquire, be acquired by the bhaktas? Buddhi. Buddhi leads to jnana. Jnana leads to asammoha. Buddhir jnanam asammoha. Shama satyantama shama. Then you also need shama, all the good qualities, right? Shama, satyam. Because shama is the only way we can deliberate and keep the ahankara under check. Because shama is always about letting down or compromising on the ahankara standpoint, right? And satyam is the leveler, great leveler for the deviating buddhi, right? Buddhi, if it can stay true to satya as an amsha, then it will never deviate because it knows what is right, what is wrong. Despite knowing what is right, what is wrong, if it is doing something adharmic, if it is deviating, it's only compromising on the satyamsha. So satya, that's something to keep the buddhi under check. Kshama, which is to keep the ahankara under check. And damaha shamaha, which is to keep the manas under check. Manas and the indriyas, right? Karmendriyas. Sukham dukkham, bhavo abhavaha, bhayancha abhayam evacha. These are the different expressions, right? The extremities, sukha dukkha, are the extremities that the manas will experience. No, bhava abhava are the extremities that the ahankara as a tattva will experience. And bhaya abhaya are the extremities that buddhi as a faculty experiences. So all these extremities of the expressions and also the various good qualities, like buddhi, jnana, asammoha, kshama, satyam, tamah, shamaha, ahimsa, samata, tushti. No, the non-violent nature, ahimsa, samata, the reconciliatory nature, tushtihi, the inner contentment kind of a nature, tapaha, the uh, the austere, endurance kind of a inner quality, dhanam, the giving kind of a quality, yashaha, the success begetting kind of a quality, and ayashaha, indifferent to the success. The seven layers, 7 points, which takes us from the lowest of the uh, uh, basis. Ahimsa is perhaps the sadhana wish list, at the Mooladhara Chakra. Like when we look into the seven, so the accent, right? We talk about yoga rudhasya tatyeva shamah karana muchyate, we say, right? See, we have to constantly aim at growing higher and higher and higher. That's the whole essence of life, right? Yoga aru ruksho mune yoga karma karana muchyate. You can't become a yogi without a desire to climb higher and higher and higher. Aru ruksho mune, right? For a muni who is desiring to climb up. So desiring to climb up is the moola bhuta requirement to become a yogi. Like for and when we and what is this going higher and higher and higher? When we look at ourselves as a mere animal representation, which is the state in which we are below the Mooladhara chakra. See, the seven chakras of the Kundalini are primarily depicted above the hip level because we are humans above the hip level. No, below the hip level we are animals. The seven levels are the animal kingdom. And when we start the ascent from the hip level upward all the way to the shiras, right? So there we have those seven arbitrary chakras, right? So seven milestones. And these are the seven milestones. Ahimsa, which is overcoming the deepest of the Abhinivesha in the Mooladhara from the animal kingdom. Then Samata, the Swadhisthana Chakra. So slowly we elevate higher and higher from Ahimsa, we become Samata. With Samata, we become Tushti. With lot of Tushti, we can endure into Tapa. With a lot of Tapas, we can go for Dana. With Dana, we receive Yasha. After receiving so much of Yasha, we will become indifferent to Yasha, Ayasha. Like, that's the complete Mukti. There is no more bondage needed. Now, all these various things are the elevation stages, right? These various bhavaha, okay, bhutana ete bhavaha bhavanti matta eva prithak vidhaha. These various expressions in the different bhuta rashis are my own different, varieties. Matta eva prithak vidhaha. These are different amshas from me only. And then he goes on to say, Maharshaya sapta purve, the seven Maharshis in the past, Chatvaro Manavastata, and also the four Manus. Manus give rise to Manavas, right? The four types of Manavas can be the Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. The four types of Manavas can be, the Bhagavad Rupas. In the Bhagavata, we hear that, even the Chaturvyuha Rupa of the Bhagavan, Aniruddha, Pradyumna, Sankarshana, Vasudeva, all of these things are also the Chaturvyuha, the Chatvaro Mana. And Chatvaro Manus can also be the Upalakshana for Chaturdasha Manus. Like, four can be called out as, while truly meaning to call out the 14 Manus, he's telling four as a Upalakshana. These four are included, then all the others are also included. So there are different ways in which that Manavastata can be, Tatvaro Manus can be looked into, but four Manus and the Maharshis, all of them, Madhava, Manasa, Jataha, they were all born from my own Manasa Putra concept. Yesham imah lokah prajaha, jataha, from whom this entire creation has sprung forward, right? So he's explaining the vividhata, how this entire world has come into being and where he is the Moola Bhuta, creator of all of it. And then I think we stopped at this shloka. Yeta vibhutim yogancha mama. These different vibhuti yoga of mine, yaha tattvataha veti. The one who understands all of these things through the proper tattva concept. Tattva, right? When we see tattva is our fundamental understanding of the spiritual sciences, right? Uh, if we have to study Ayurveda or we have to study Vedanta, anything, tattva in each Sampradayic school, we have a different way in which we understand the tattva. And tattva becomes the basis for all our understandings thereon. Right? Tattva, that way, can also perhaps be a way of defining the quantum. When we want to talk about quantum mechanics or quantum physics or quantum science, we have to define what the quantas are, what the part. Quanta basically means the part, right? Elemental part, right? Like, for example, in our tattva, the most prominent tattva schools, the quantums, the way we have identified are that, everything in this life, universe, and everything is made up of either Pancha Mahabhuta or the Pancha Tanmatras within them, or the Pancha Jnanendriyas that try to understand them, or the Pancha Karmendriyas that try to interact with them, or the Manas that is processing all the Indriya karmas, or the Buddhi that is primarily discerning the knowledge behind all these activities, or the Ahankara which attaches the vanity, pride against all the doership of these activities, or the chitta, who is the silent observer of everything, or is it the Moola Prakriti, Mahatattva, the primordial matter, or the Purusha, who's infusing energy into all of these activities, right? And then there is a Ishvara, who is the independent, Karta of all of these things, right? So there are different dimensions in which this entire Tattva tree can be understood. This Bhagavan's Vibhuti Rupa, Vibhuti Yoga, Etam Vibhutim Yogam Chamama Yaha Tattvataha Veti, the one who understands all of these things through the lens of Tattva. This Tattva concept is a contribution of Kapila Maharshi. That's why we say whenever we offer anything to Bhagavan, Kapilat Makadivyena Chakshusha Tvam Vilokaya, we offer, please offer me the discerning capability, the seeing ability, of Kapila, through the eyes of Kapila. Help me understand, discern everything through the eyes of Kapila, because that's the way analysis is to be drawn, right? That's one of the, Kapila Narahari Bhagavat Trayava Pusha Netra Dinasika Syadi Chaparana Makaji Pagelidan Tadali. Uh, there are various Dasa Sahitya also, which talks about Kapila Vapu. Kapila should be the face. The way we have to observe things should be with the power of Kapila, right? Tattvataha. And the contribution of Kapila is Tattva, right? So we have to understand Bhagavan through Tattva is where we concluded, right? Because Tattva is a very important subject. Chapter after chapter, like in the second chapter, Nasato Vidyate Bhavo Nabhavo Vidyate Satah Ubhayorapi Dushtantastvanayos Tattvadarshibhi Tattva Darshana Tattva, right? It's a very important subject. I think somebody has to make note of this. This will be a very interesting. Chapter after chapter, Krishna brings in the importance of Tattva. In the third chapter also he says, तत्त्ववित्तु महाबाहो गुणकर्म विभागयोः गुणागुणेषु वर्तन्त इति मत्वा न सज्जते. Once you look at the karmas, tattva behind what is karma, all the action, it is basically gunas playing on the gunas. If you understand that, you will not be attached. So in karma yoga also, once he puts a very nice discerning points around tattva. In the fourth chapter also, janma karma cha me divyam evam yo vetti tattvataha tyaktva deham punarjanma naiti mameti so Arjuna. So he says that, right? In the jnana marga also, if you understand the proper tattva, the tattva behind how the creation happens, you will not be attached. So tattva is very important. And similarly, in this chapter also, chapter on chapter, I think there are only a couple of chapters where he doesn't mention the importance of tattva, because those chapters are themselves talking about tattva, the Paramatma tattva, like the eighth chapter, it is completely talking about Paramatma tattva. So there is no mention of tattva separately. The 15th chapter, he doesn't mention tattva. But this chapter also, this seventh chapter, seventh sloka, sorry, that we ended last week on, is primarily putting the importance of tattva. Etam vibhutim yogam cha mama yaha tattvataha veti saha avikampeena yogena yujyate. He will be attached in avikampa yoga. Vikampa is basically trembling, untrembling, unwavering, undisturbed kind of a yoga he will be engaged in. Atra na samshayaha. There is no doubt in this. Right? That is the proclamation from Bhagavan happening. Before we continue with what we are supposed to see today, which is their eighth shloka, a quick check if anybody wants to add something, or we can move on. Okay, please do click on the link that has been provided by Shraddhaji under the room title. That will take us directly to the eighth shloka. The shloka reads like this. Aham sarvasya prabhavo mattah sarvam pravartate iti matva bhajante mam बुधा भाव समन्विता. अहम सर्वस्य प्रभवो मत्तः सर्वं प्रवर्तते इति मत्वा भजन्ते मां बुधा भाव समन्विता. We scroll down a little bit on this web page. We see a section called Padacheda, where we break every word. Aham sarvasya prabhavah mattah sarvam pravartate iti matva bhajante mam budhaah bhava samanvitaah. So there are a couple of sandhis, right? Prabhavaha plus mattah become prabhavo mattah, visarga guna sandhi, right? And budhaah plus bhava samanvitaah become budha bhava samanvitaah. The visarga goes lopa, visarga lopa sandhi. Budhaah that Visarga goes Lopa. Right? So there are two sandhis. Now these individual words of the shloka from the Padacheda, we will rejumble, we rearrange them into a proper prose order because that will sound like a statement then. And that is what the section just above Padacheda gives. Anvaya, the section called Anvaya, where they have given the prose order of these words. So it says, Hey Mahabaho, Arjuna, Aham Sarvasya Prabhavaha, Mattaha Sarvam Pravartate. इति मत्वा भावसमन्विताः बुधाः मां bhajante. Very beautiful line, right? What does it mean? For that, we click on dictionary. There is a link called dictionary on the top, right? Hey Mahabaho, O Arjuna, O very responsible Arjuna. Hey Priyamanaya Mahabaho. That's the Sambodhana, right? That's how Arjuna has been called. The responsible guy who's getting delighted, who's getting excited. Because the see, Krishna is telling, no, Manmana Bhava Madbhakto Madhyaji Mam Namaskuru. Mame Vaishasi, you will get my position only. You will become me. You will get my bhava. Mameva Aishasi, right? So, such as the great prospect, anybody would be getting delighted, right? If I am hearing that from Bhagavan, that you will become like me, beta, no matter what state I am in, I'll get jumping up in joy, right? So now he's telling, hey Mahabaho, hey Priyamanaya Mahabaho, Aham Sarvasya Prabhavaha. I am the Prabhava of everything. Prabhava can be birth, Prabhava can be Prabhava, which is the influence. Prabhava can also be the Bahuvachana of Prabhu. Prabhu, Prabhu, Prabhava. Right? I am the lords of everything. The Bahuvachana of Prabhu is Prabhava. I am the many Prabhus in everything. That can be one. I am the one who Prabhavati, who does the influence on everything. I am the Prabhava, Prakrishta Bhava. Like, I am the superior beginning of everything. Right? Mattah sarvam pravartate. From me, everything proceeds. Studying thus, bhava samsod with proper bhava, buddhaha, the intelligent, the buddhi people, right? The wise people. Mam bhajante, they adore me, they worship me, they partake unto me. Bhaja, no, bhajante, vibhajanat bhajana, right? We offer ourselves as a part into that Bhagavad Karya. Maham Karta, Hari Karta, right? So a part of me is Bhagavan, or the whole of me is Bhagavan's one part, right? So we are already a part of Bhagavan. So everything that we do is Brahmarpanam, Brahmavihi. So what Krishna is telling is those people, who know that I am the Prabhu of everything, I am the Prabhus of everything, I am the beginning of everything, I am the Lord of everything, I am the beginning of everything, right? I am the birth of everything. Okay, and from me everything has come out. And these are something that he keeps telling again and again and again, right? Those who understand this thoroughly, iti matva, bhava samandita. What are the bhavas? See, we have to talk about whenever we talk about bhava, it's the Bhagavad Bhava. Properly embracing my bhava. And this Bhagavad Bhava, which is typically one subset of it, is understood to be the most popular of the Sadbhava, right? The good behavior, good characters. Sadbhavas are basically, mudita, upeksha, maitra, karuna. Some of these are the very popular sadbhavas, right? So properly encircle anvita, vastrandita, draping the sari, like yashubhra vastrandita. When we hear, so anvita can be not just endowed with the rapt emotion, draped in the rapt emotion. We can look at that. So always covered in that nice bhava, you know, those kind of intelligent people, Buddhaha, Bhava Samanvitaha Buddhaha, those intelligent people with such nice feelings, Mam Bhajanti, they just offer themselves unto me. Right? Very beautifully Krishna is explaining this. Right? Now, what do we make sense of this in the words of Aurobindo? Let's look at the Aurobindo interpretation of this. Hey Arjuna, I am the birth of everything, and from me all proceeds into development of action and movement. Understanding thus, the wise adore me in rapt emotion, very simplistic. But Prabhavaha can be birth, can be beginning, can be the influence and the bearing, or can be the lords, the multiple lords, lordships, right? And everything is extending from me. Okay, the proper Bhava Samanvita Buddha, will constantly do bhajana to me. See, bhajana need not necessarily be offerings, stutis, even the work that we do can be bhajana, can be offering to the Bhagavad Seva, right? That's what this current adhyaya of the Mahabharata, which is the Bhishma Parva, right? Bhishma Charya is a great example of how to be a bhakta, how to do bhajana, in everything that he does, whether he is following celibacy, whether he is fighting the war, whether he is doing his archana, right? When he does the stuti also, the Vishnu Sahasranama today that we all know as, see, there are other Vishnu Sahasranamas. There is one in Padma Purana, but we don't really call them as the Vishnu Sahasranama. The Vishnu Sahasranama is what came through Bhishmacharya because that's perhaps the finest expression that mankind has seen, right? Though there are many confirmations to the grammatical rules being a little compromised here and there. The Anushtup meter can go a little wrong here and there. Too much of cha, eva kind of words being added. But the bhava of that Vishnu Sahasranama is perhaps the best. And all thanks to Bhishmacharya, right? Bhishmacharya is the perfect, bhajana. So much so that even on the deathbed, he's like Chikandi Nahusho Vrishaha. He can imagine even Chikandi, the one who brought out his downfall, he can see Bhagavan in that also. That's the level at which he offers himself, right? Completely. So that kind of a bhava samanvitaha bhutaha mam bhajanti, they offer. And even when he was fighting the war, he loves the Pandavas. Jayos the Pandaputrana is something that he would chant every day. Every morning when he starts his sandhya, he would chant. He would pray for the victory of the Pandavas. But on a daily basis, he would destroy one Anikini Sainya of the Pandavas, right? About 10,000 people. He would demolish himself because he was only offering himself to the Bhagavad Karya, right? He is the commander in chief. That's his duty. He has to do. No matter that is the harshest of the things according to his own liking. He doesn't like killing the Pandavas. He loves them. He loves the Pandavas, but he was killing their people because that's the Bhagavad Seva, right? So bhava samanvitaha bhagaha iti matva mam bhajante. Very beautiful expression. So we are almost coming to the conclusion of this entire lengthy discourse from Bhagavan. So that takes us to shloka number 9. Shloka number 9 reads like this. Macchitta madgata prana bodhayantah parasparam kathayantascha man nityam tushyanti charamanti cha. Macchitta madgata prana bodhayantah parasparam kathayantascha man nityam tushyanti charamanti cha. The padacheda of this shloka, it reads like this. Mat chittaha becomes machittaha. The chutva sandhi. The becomes cha when it comes in contact with cha. Chajati, cha, cha, ja, 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 any of them. The takara, when it comes in front, becomes chakara. Mat chittaha, mat chittaha, mat chittaha, madgata pranaha. Mat gata pranaha, madgata pranaha. And machittaha, machittama. So visarga lopa. So there is a shutva sandhi, visarga lopa sandhi. And mat gana, mat gata prana, mad gata prana. So ta becomes the mat gata, mad gata. Gachatatapa in front of gajadadaba becomes gajadadaba. So just for something, right? Mad gata pranaha. Pranaha bodhayantaha becomes prana bodhayantaha. So visarga lopa sandhi. Bodhayantaha parasparam. Kathayantaha cha kathayantascha. Visargas chutva sandhi. Mam nityam tushyanti cha ramanti cha. These are the words. We put them back into a proper order. We read the Anvaya, right? E Mahabaho. Mad chittaha. Madgata pranaha. Cha parasparam bodhayantaha. Mam kathayantaha. Cha nityam tushyanti ramanti cha. What does that mean, He Mahabaho? Mat chittaha. The chitta towards me. Mat means towards me, right? Mat chittaha, consciousness full of me, consciousness completely kept in my side, right? Towards me, completely aligned in my direction, right? Conscious mat chittaha. Chitta is also buddhi. Chetana is also buddhi, right? So sometimes it can also be looked as buddhi. No, the self completely towards me. Madgata prana, even the prana. Prana can be the breath. Prana apana, the mahaprana, right? The breath is also prana. Prana is also jiva. Right? Pran jaye par vachan na jaye. We say that. No? Prana is also jiva. Prana can be the breath, the Mulabhuta Vayu inside our body, which is prana. Prana can be the life. Prana can be the indriyas also. We have seen that also. Prana can be indriyas. Like manas, the one that controls the entire indriyas, is also prana. So prana can be understood. So madgata prana, all life activities, get aligned to me. Like mat chitta, the self aligned to me, and all life activities aligned to me, towards me. Cha also. Parasparam bodhayantaha, illuminating each other. Illuminating what? Each other, illuminating the chitta and the prana. They both need to illuminate each other. See, Devan Bhavayatanena, Te Deva Bhavayantubaha. Who are these Devas that he is talking about in the Yajna? The different Abhimani Devatas which will govern our actions. Like Indra Deva will hold our Pani, the Rudra Deva will control our senses. There are Vayu Deva controls our prana. Controlling all various activities is the prana Shakti. Ultimately, the Jivottama is the Vayu, right? So bodhayantaha parasparam. So when we say deva bhavayatanena te deva bhavayantuvaha, I take care of the devas, the abhimani devas, and the abhimani devas take care of me. Parasparam bhavayantaha, take care of each other. Basically, chitta and the prana within my body. If I have to count all these devatas inside my body, basically the paraspara bhava of the chitta and the prana, the life activities and the self, they both need to take care of each other. Bodhayanta parasparam, illuminating each other, one another. Mam kathayantaha, okay, they will be speaking of me, they will be talking of me, they will be narrating. Kathayantaha is also narrating, right? Katha, narrating stories of me. Right? Chanityam, always, ever. No, tushyanti, ramanti cha, tushyanti, santushyanti. They remain contented, and ramanti, they take delight also. Right? They also infuse others, influence others, encourage others, motivate others, right? Take along others. So when we see some of these satsanga karyas of some of these institutions like ISKCON and all, it's so infectious when they do the kirtan with the dolak and things like that, mridanga and all. So infectious. You will be attracted to get into that circle and start jumping up with them because the way they keep chanting and the way they keep the katayanta, like the indulgence is so deep. They become very infectious and ramanticha. That's where the delight is. And delight is ramanti is a very thing. It is as much as it is the delight within, it's also delight to others, right? It's an infectious kind of a behavior. Ramanti, tushyanti, self-content, and ramanti, delightful. Delightful is where we also get along others around us. So very beautiful, right? After telling in the previous shloka, now he is telling very clearly, like, Machittaha, Madgata Pranaha, Bodhayantah Parasparam. People who have completely aligned their self and their life activities towards me. Okay, and keeping both their self and the life activities illuminating each other. Very beautiful, right? The more cleaner actions I do, the more cleaner self becomes. The more cleaner the self becomes, the more cleaner actions we do. Right? Our prakasha, our chitta and our prana, they help each other. Like the shraddha and the jnana, they help each other. The bhakti and the jnana, they help each other. Right? So the chitta and the prana, they help each other. Kathayano parasparam bodhayantaha ma kathayantaha. They keep narrating stories about me. My vividhata, katha, kathayanta. Nityam tushyanti ramanti cha. They are ever in the santushta state and the ramaniya state. Let's see what Aurobindo translation says for this. Their consciousness full of me, and their life wholly given up to me, illumining each other, mutually talking about me. They are ever contented and joyful. Right? This is a very beautiful shloka. Right? So two shlokas. Right? Very beautiful. Uh, Two shlokas, aham sarvasya prabhavah mattah sarvam pravartate iti matva bhajante mam buddha bhava samanditaha. Understanding that he is the Prabhu, he is the beginning of everything and everything comes from him. Understanding this, the very beautifully endowed people with bhava, they offer themselves completely to him. And in that state, when they are completely, their chitta towards him and their prana towards him, and the prana and the chitta constantly illuminating each other, they continue to talk glories of him. These are the people who naturally are very expressive when they talk about the Kathayantaha also. Even the Katha, when they narrate, 10 people would love to listen to it. That's the kind of a behavior they will get into. And they are constantly Tushyanti Ramanti. They are self content. That's a state to be. And that's the state they will be. Right? So with that, we move on to the next shloka, shloka number 10. Quickly, we will read this. Hari Om. Om Tesham Satata Yuktanam Bhajatam Priti Purvakam Dadami Buddhi Yogantam Yena Mamupayanti Te Tesham Satata Yuktanam Bhajatam Priti Purvakam Dadami Buddhi Yogantam Yena Mamupayanti Te. Beautiful. This is a very beautiful shloka. Let's see what the Padacheda gives us. Tesham Satata Yuktanam Bhajatam Priti Purvakam Dadami Buddhi Yogantam Yena Mam Upayanti Te. Very beautiful. We're almost now coming to the conclusion of the conversation, right? Of the dialogue from Krishna. So this is a beautiful summary of everything that he's told so far. What the next step? Like, hey Arjuna, Tesham, to those. Who are those? Who are constantly, Matchittaha, Madgata Pranaha, who understand that he is the Sarvasya Prabhavaha, Mattah Sarvam Pravartate, the ones who are constantly engaged in activities mentioned in chapter 8, Vedeshu Yajneshu Tapassu Chaiva, Daneshu Yat Punya Phalam Pradishtam. All of those things that was spoken of, Atyeti Tatsarvamidam Viditva Yogi Param Sthanamupeti Chadyam. That kind of a yogi, okay, who constantly offers everything for the sake of Brahma. Those type of people, the type of people that were explained in the ninth chapter. Manmana bhava madbhakto madhyaji imam namaskuru mame vaishyasi yuktva matmanam matparayana. So those kind of people, people who are always, manmana, always towards. So the same type of people that has been summarized in the last couple of shlokas. Aham sarvasya prabhavaha iti matva ye mam bhajante. Mattah sarvam pravartate iti matva ye mam bhajante. Matchittaha te madgata pranaha te bodhayantaha parasparam. So those type of people who are satata yuktana. In simple words, these people who are just now being explained through the entirety of the eighth chapter, yogi, tasmad yogi bhavarjuna, right? Always stay a yogi, all that. Right? So those type of satata yuktana, those who are constantly in yoga, in a yukti state, priti purvakam, with an intense delight of love, right? There is no ashraddha, there is no doubts, asamshaya, there is nothing like that, right? So priti purvakam bhajatam, those people who with priti purvaka bhava constantly worship unto him, which means all their life activities, all their self importance is pledged under the big picture called Bhagavan. Tam buddhi yogam dadami, to such people I will offer the buddhi yoga. I will give the buddhi shakti, the yoga of understanding. Yoga is upaya, yogyata, right? The capability. I will give the understanding capability for them. Yena, by which mam te upayanti. They will receive me. They will acquire me. They will become one with me. They will get my bhava. Upayanti. Yanti is acquired. Upa is some sub, right? Upa is substitute. So we need to make sense of it. They will reach me. They will become one with me. They will acquire my bhava. Something like that. We have to upayanti. Let's see what Aurobindo translation says for this. Huh. To these people, all the people, right? Satata Yukta. These who are in constant union with me, right? Who are in constant union with me, Satata Yuktana, Tesham, no, and adore me with an intense delight of love. Like, Preeti Purvakam, Tesham, those people who are always in intense delight of love towards me. I give the yoga of understanding, Buddhi Yogam Dadami, by which they come to me. Yena te mam upayanti. Right? See, this is quintessentially the summary of the entire 10th chapter. Right? 10th chapter, the Vividhata, the Vibhuti, right? Without the Buddhi, which leads to jnana, which then leads to asammoha. Buddhi, jnana, asammoha. That's the logical development, right? Now, Buddhi Yoga, right? We need the Jnana Chakshu, the 10th sloka of the Purushottama Yoga, right? I mean, that's also speaks something very similar. Shrotram Chakshu, no, Utkramantam Sitam Vapi, Bhunjanam Va Gunanvitam, Vimodhananu Pashyanti Jnana Chakshusha. From the time a person enters a body for a life, right, a mortal life, and to the time they exit that body, Utkramantam Sitam Vapi, Bhunjanam Va Gunanvitam, whether they come, whether they go, whether they remain, whatever they are doing, Bunjanamba Gunanviti, and even when they are invariably, we are all endowed with actions that are Gunavita, right? It's based on the gunas that we carry. Vimodha na anupashyanti. The moodha, the moodhatma, Vimodha na anupashyanti is not seeing. Seeing that this is the Bhagavan who is upasevati. That's what comes in the ninth sloka of the Purushottama Yoga. That all of these things are primarily enabled by Bhagavan and enjoyed by Bhagavan. We are mere instruments. We are mere nimitta. All the chesta, all the actions that are happening are fundamentally enabled by him and enjoyed by him. Right? So, and that part will not be seen by the living beings who come and go and stay and do various chestas in life. Only people with the proper jnana chakshu Pashyanti Jnana Chakshushaha. So only through the Jnana Chakshu, people will be able to see the real Vibhuti Rupa, right? That's what we hear in the 15th Adhyaya. Very similar. For those people who are constantly giving their self to me, automatically they will acquire that Buddhi Yoga from me, and from which they will be able to see me. Mam Upayanti can also be that nobody needs to acquire anything. It's just a matter of realizing, right? The Bhagavan is there. Am I able to see? Am I able to realize? Is the question. So, Mam Upayanti, acquiring Upa, can also be to the fact that you are already with him. Just realize. Realization is not that easy, right? We will have many impediments. Impediments arising out of ahankara, impediments arising out of sammoha, impediments, all ajnana, right? Ajnana that primarily acts on three fundamental antakarana, right? No, indriyani, mano, buddhi, asya adhisthana muchyate. In the karma yoga, Krishna says this ajnana plays on indriyani, mano, buddhi, in the indriyas and the manas and the buddhi. This is where the ajnana will do the avarana, right? Will have its veiling effect, will have its covering effect, right? So this shloka for such people who are satata yuktas, who with no unflinching love, Preeti Purvakam, and offer themselves completely for the sake of Bhagavad Karya. For them, the Buddhi Yoga will come, which will be given by Bhagavan, with which they will be able to see this Vibhuti Amsha. Right? Now, 10th, see, 10 is a signal of complete, Paripurna, Purnamada, Purnamidam, Purna, Purnamudachyati. Right? So this is the 10th chapter will have significance from that angle. 10 means complete, everything about Bhagavan. Right? That is the Vibhuti, Vishesha, Vishishta, Vividhata, Vikrishta, Bhuti, Vaividhya, Vaibhava. Right? And this shloka also has 10 words. Tesham, Satata Yuktanam, 2, Bhajatam, 3, Preeti Purvakam, 4, Dadami, 5, Buddhi Yogam, 6, Tam, 7, Ena, 8, Mamupayanti, 9, Te, 10. There are 10 words exactly. Right? So that's another very important thing. So 10th shloka of the 10th chapter, having 10 words, all good coin, and 10 means Purna, Paripurna. Right? I mean, for the sake of playing with words, with the numbers, I mean, there are some people who like playing with numbers. 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10 in binary. Binary is a very important frame, right? Binary is very important. Dvandvaha samasikasya cha. Binary is very special form of creation. A lot of our computing world wouldn't have been possible without the concept of binary, binomial, right? The bit, byte, all of these things. So 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10 in binary stands for 42. 42 is the number of shlokas in this chapter. Right? So there are some number games also somewhere hidden. Right? So, but nonetheless, this is a very beautiful summary. For those people who are satata yukta and constantly, offer themselves to me with complete preeti, for them the buddhi yoga will automatically come, from which they will be able to see this Vaibhava of the Bhagavad Rupa, right? That's the whole thing. Prayana kale cha katham jneyah asi. Don't worry, you will get it. Just stay engaged in your offer as a yogi to everything that you do as a Bhagavad Karya. Brahmanyadhaya karmani sangam tyaktva karoti yaha lityatena sapapena padmapatramivambasa. So these are constant messages. I mean, this shloka came in the 10th, fifth chapter, right? So the message has been very, very constantly coming, right? So that we move on to the 11th shloka. Hari Om. तेषामेवानुकम्पार्थं महमज्ञानजन्तमः नाशयाम्यात्मभावस्थो ज्ञानदीपेन भास्वता तेषामेवानुकम्पार्थं महमज्ञानजन्तमः नाशयाम्यात्मभावस्थो ज्ञानदीपेन भास्वता. The Padacheda, Tesham Eva Anukampartham Aham Ajnanajam Tamaha Nashayami Atma Bhavasthaha Jnanadipena Bhaswata. What does that mean? First we see the Anvaya. Tesham Anukampartham. Tesham Anukampartham Ahameva Atma Bhavastaha Ajnanajam Tamaha Bhaswata Jnanadipena Nashayami. What does that mean? Hey Arjuna, Tesham Anukampartham, for the sake of the compassion for them. Tesham Anukampartham, Tesham is for them. Right? For them, Anukampartham, for the sake of Anukampa. Anukampa is compassion, sympathy. Right? Anukampa. Kampa is tremble. Anukampa is sympathy. Right? For out of compassion for them, Tesham Anukampartham, for the sake of compassion towards them. Ahameva, I only, Atma Bhavastha, lodged in their self. Atma is self, Bhavastha. Bhava is the expressions, right? Various moods that we generate. And Bhava is all created out of the karma. Karma is what leads, gives rise to Bhava. Matta eva pratagvidaha bhavanti bhava bhutanam matta eva pratagvidaha. They become different types of Bhava of his different nature only. And bhava is rooted in the karma, right? Bhuta bhava udbhava karaha visargaha tat karma iti sanjitaha. Karma is the one that gives rise to the bhava of the bhuva, bhuta rashi. Bhuta bhavod karo visargaha. Karma sanjitaha. Karma is the one that gives rise to the bhava, right? So out of the various actions that are happening, when our actions are also karma brahmodbhavam vidhi, when our actions are also properly seated in Brahma, so then that Parabrahma, that Bhagavan will be Atma Bhavastaha. Right? So he will be seated, lodged in the self, Atma Bhavastaha, Aham Eva. That Atma Bhavastha, me alone, Ajnanajan Tamaha Nashayami. The tamas that is born out of Ajnana, the darkness that is born out of Ajnana, Bhaswata Jnana Deepena Nashayami. By the Bhaswata, by the glowing, by the blazing Jnana Deepena, the light of knowledge, by that blazing lamp of knowledge, I will destroy. What is What is the importance of destroying the ajnana? Ajnana is the one that will prevent us from doing Bhagavad Chintana at the time of departure. And ajnana is the one that can prevent us from doing the proper upasana of the Bhagavad Chintana at the time of departure. Two aspects, right? One is how to think of him, and how is it even possible to think of him, right? Both of these are impeded out of ajnana, right? At the time of passing away, if I start thinking of frivolous things like how to save my breath and things like that without looking at Bhagavan, of course, proper thinking of Bhagavan will also make sure that I will also think about recovering my breath. No denying that, right? But there is a way to do it in the proper Bhagavad Chintana, right? So it doesn't take away that fact, but giving more importance to the bigger picture is the key, right? Because otherwise, when we think of saving our breath, most of the drowning cases in the sea is primarily because the first person who is about to drown was pulling the second person who tried to save him, right? Because altruism will go for a toss. We can't think of good, when we are in that extreme situation, right? It will definitely go for a toss. So it's not easy. Now, if I were to be in a proper Bhagavad Chintana, I will definitely not pull somebody down. See, Barkata Kishora Nyaya, there's a thing, right? The monkey, it will definitely try to save the kid, like, in as many different instances possible. But in the dire instances, the monkey will not think twice before throwing the kid out, right? That's not proper. So that altruism, that will eventually die out in most animals, and humans are also bound for it, right? So the proper way is to fix that Bhagavad Bhava. That should be done. These kind of things perhaps is saved, when we get into the proper Bhagavad Bhava. But nonetheless, let's quickly see what Aurobindo interpretation will say. Very simplistically, Krishna is now summarizing this entire 71 sloka long conversation, right? The Ashtatmaka Brahma questions from Arjuna. Krishna took some 71 slokas to explain that, right? Now, the question of Katham Jneyah Asi is not at all a worry, because out of compassion for such people who are Satata Yuktis, okay, who, in whom I, as their own self will be lodged, I, lodged in their self, lift the blazing lamp of knowledge. Okay, for such people I will only lift the blazing lamp of knowledge, and destroy the tamas, destroy the darkness which is born out of their ignorance. Okay, ajnanajam, I will destroy that ajnana. I will destroy that tamasa. I will destroy that darkness, so that they will be able to see that jyoti, that deepam jyoti parabrahma, that they will be able to see the real parabrahma swarupa in everything that is happening. Only thing is, they need to be that satata yuktana. Like, the previous shloka, for such people, out of compassion, at one point in time, they will get the awakening. I will not let them down. Primarily, what Krishna is telling is, for such people, I will not let them down. Right? So that's primarily what we see as an end of conversation. Now we will have Arjuna expressing a little more, another 7, 8 shlokas, beautiful expressions of bhakti coming from Arjuna, right? Param Brahma Param Dhama Pavitram Paramam Bhavan. Very beautiful expressions of the Bhagavan. We will see them next week. We will stop here at 9 o'clock. Today, for the sake of Gita Jayanti, we didn't want to cancel the room, nor we would want to divide too many people. So there are some beautiful rooms that are being conducted on the for the sake of Gita Jayanti. So we will keep to one. Namaste Vasudevaya Preyasa Me Priyottama Samasta Guna Sampurna Nirdoshanandadayine Mukopi Yat Prasadena Mukunda Shayanayate Raja Rajayate Rikto Raghavendram Tamashraye Bharati Ramana Mukhya Pranantarata Shri Gopala Krishna Priyatam Shri Krishna Arpanamastu. Happy Gita Jayanti, everyone. Have a beautiful weekend. Jai Shri Krishna.
Jai Shri Krishna.
Jai Shri
Happy Gita
Krishna.
Jayanti.
Jai Shri Krishna.